I never even graduated high school, Declan. He looks at me, and there's a hint of surprise in his eyes.
How far did you get?
I never finished the 9th grade. When Pike turned 18, I ran away with him, so school was out of the question because I'd get busted by the state. I was always a good student, though, made excellent grades. I loved reading and learning, so I had Pike buy me all the materials to get my GED, even though it would never be official. Since I was still underage and in the system, I couldn't use my real name for anything.
And when you were of age?
By then, it didn't matter. I knew we'd never have the means for me to ever go to college, so what was the point of going back to get my GED, I say. I did what I could, though. I'd pick classes that interested me out of the local college class catalog, and Pike would buy me the textbooks from a used bookstore. I'd read them, and in a pathetic way, it made me feel like I was making something of myself.
You were.
All I did was make a mess of myself.
That too,
he responds in light jest.
But you're bright and well-spoken. No one would ever suspect you only made it to the 9th grade. You're an incredible woman who's fighting hard to make things right.
Things will never be right.
Maybe the past won't, but right here, in this moment, this is where it all changes, he says. You can do anything you want to do.
His confidence in me is powerful, making me feel like there's a future to look forward to, that the choices I make won't be for naught. And maybe he's right. Maybe it's the here and now that I need to focus on to move forward. I've always been running, and now, for the first time, I no longer have to. I can stand here, in one place, and know that with Declan by my side, I'll be okay. So, with a little bit of optimism, I tell him, I want to finish high school. He smiles, pride in his eyes, and says,
We can get all the details on what needs to be done tomorrow. But tonight, I'm taking you out.
A date?
It'll be a first for us.
After catching too many perch to count, we decide I win based on the bath alone. Being able to be out with Declan, free from lies and games in this city where we used to hide, feels great. This is where we fell in love, but that life was always tainted, and now we can create something new. With the goofy shirt Declan bought me crumpled on the bathroom floor, I finished the last of my makeup after a long shower. Walking into the bedroom, I can see Declan out in the living room sipping scotch. He looks good as he waits on me, dressed in his usual look, a sleek designer suit tailored to perfection. I pick out a flattering navy shift dress that I purchased on my shopping trip with Davina. After I slip it on, I step into a pair of nude heels and join Declan. We then make our way down to the lobby where his roadster is waiting out front. We drive through the night to Cité, an upscale restaurant that's perched atop Lake Point Tower. We're seated next to the windows, which provide stunning views of the lake and city, and Declan takes the chair right next to me instead of across the table. He was right. This is a first for us. We've never been on a date, and then it hits me that I've never been on a date. Not a real one, not with a man I love. The thought causes me to smile, and Declan takes notice.
What's that grin all about?
Nothing, I tell him, feeling a bit juvenile.
That's not nothing behind those blue eyes of yours. Spill it.
You're pushy, you know that?
I'm aware, and I'm waiting.
Fine, I exhaust. I was just sitting here thinking, it's really silly.
Humor me.
Aside from fallacies, this is my first date.
Ever?
He says in curiosity. Ever. He slips his hand under the table and places it on my thigh, giving me a gentle squeeze. We order wine, and he insists on the Siberian caviar service, promising I'll love it, and I do. You're quite divergent, you know that? I say, setting my wine glass down.
Why's that?
I remember you taking me to breakfast at that diner when I first met you. Stale coffee and pancakes.
The Over-Easy Cafe does not have stale coffee,
he immediately defends, and I laugh, bantering, whatever you say. But now you have me here, drinking a bottle of wine that's so expensive it's obscene.
You don't like it?
I never said that. It's just a contrast from the not stale coffee and the hot dog you ate from the street vendor today.
So what would you prefer?
He leans closer to me and slips his hand back on my thigh. I like your contradictions, I admit, as he runs his hand under the hem of my dress. My body tenses, and I shift my eyes around the room, wondering if anyone knows what's happening under the table linens.
You nervous?
Giving him my attention, I ask, You like making me nervous?
Yes.
Why? My voice trembles when his fingers hit the lace of my panties, and then he nudges against my thigh for me to uncross my legs, and I do.
Because I like testing you,
he confesses, shifting my panties over.
To see how far you'll let me push you.
When have I ever stopped you?
Never.
He whispers on a husky voice at the same time he shoves one of his fingers inside my pussy. I gasp. He smiles. Pride and domination color his eyes in heated black.
You want me to stop?
No, I breathe, and he drags his finger out of me and rolls my clit in slow circles.
Tell me why you yield like this to me.
Because I love you. He thrusts his finger back inside of me.
Say it again.
My breath catches, stammering unevenly as I resist the urge to grind down on his hand, nearly whimpering the words, I love you. He abruptly pulls out of me, leaving me yearning, and shifts my panties back over to cover me. My chest rises and falls noticeably as I watch him bring his hand up to his mouth and suck my arousal off his finger. Unsatisfied and aching, I make it through dinner, and when the bill is paid, I'm quick to leave. Declan's cocky smirk should irritate me, but it only makes me want to fuck him more. He takes my hand, and once we're on the elevator, he further tests me by refusing to touch me. My body is on high alert, sensitive to every element, begging to be touched, but he doesn't engage me. Asshole, I mutter under my breath, and he smiles. The elevator doors open, and as soon as we exit the building, my steps halt the moment I see her. She stops in her steps as soon as she sees me, her eyes narrowing into daggers. It's a look I've never seen her wear, but it's wasted on me. You're back, she states. It's nice to see you too, Jacqueline, I condescend.
Jacqueline?
Declan questions to himself, but we all hear. You, she accuses, looking at Declan. You son of a bitch! You're sorely mistaken, I butt in. Your husband is dead, because of you two, she accuses. Her loud voice grabs the attention of a couple passers-by, but they keep moving. She then looks down at my hand linked with Declan's. And how fast you move on, Nina. You've got a lot of nerve. This coming from the woman who not only fucked my husband but was stupid enough to get pregnant. So don't you dare stand there like you're a goddamn ice princess, I lash out while Declan allows me to handle her on my own. Tears rise and then fall down her cheeks when she explodes. You killed my husband. I have nothing because you took it away from me. I didn't take shit from you. I freed you from that asshole. He fucking raped me and tortured me. And look at you, I belittle, standing there like you're the victim when you should be thanking me for ridding the world of that piece of shit. Beyond what he did to me, my blood boils when I think of what Richard did to Declan's mother and the part he played in my father's life. How dare you tarnish his name with your lies? He'd never— You can't be that ignorant. Surely you know by now the man he was, yet you're so weak that you're still defending him. What am I supposed to do? My life is over. My name doesn't mean anything anymore, and because of you, I'm left with nothing. Everything I ever had has been seized. I've been ostracized by everyone, and I'm buried in debt. And yet you blame me, I say. I guess you got what you deserved for marrying that asshole and screwing around with a married man. It seems all you have is the hope that your bastard son doesn't grow up to hate you, since he now carries all the wealth. My smile grows. Must suck to know all that money is within reach, and yet Bennett forbade you from touching it because he hated you. You bitch!
You're done here, Declan barks, stepping between us. That man you married was a cold-blooded killer. Accept it or not, I don't really give a fuck. But don't place blame where it doesn't belong.
Not allowing another second to pass, he leads me to his car, leaving her crying, alone, on the sidewalk. Declan closes my door, and I look at her through the window, hating her for the mere fact that she loved and supported such an evil man. A man who left me stripped naked for days while he degraded and humiliated me, beat me, and sodomized me. A man who took so much from both my life and Declan's. Declan speeds off, and I refuse to let the memories of what Richard did to me come to life.
Are you okay?
I don't want to talk about it, I snap. I can't talk because all I can do right now is focus on forcing those memories back into the deep cave of my soul. Pinching my eyes closed, battling against myself, I hear the ringing in my head, and it feels like an axe to my skull. I clamp my hands over my ears, and I don't even notice Declan pulling the car over. He reaches out to me and touches my arm, and when I open my eyes, I see Richard's smug face instead of Declan's. My body coils back, lurching away from him, and I scream, "Don't fucking touch me!"
Elizabeth, it's okay,
he insists, unbuckling my seatbelt and banding his arms around me as I fight against the high-pitched ringing in my head. I release a wretched scream, my voice bleeding. "Make it stop!"
Open your eyes and look at me,
he demands in a hardened voice. He grabs hold of my head and forces me to focus on him.
Breathe. I need you to breathe with me.
Everything around me and within me is a demented chaos of sounds, voices, visions. A hurricane spinning with inconceivable force, but his eyes remain still and steady. He's the one unwavering element in this maelstrom, and it takes all the effort in me to focus on him, on his words.
That's it, darling. Just breathe,
he encourages when I feel my lungs inflate. My eyes never waver, and soon everything dulls into a low hum that I'm eventually able to silence. He's managed to chase away the demons I couldn't fight off on my own. And it's here, in the ink of night, on a deserted side street, that I must face the fact that I undoubtedly need Declan. Chapter 19. After my run-in with Jacqueline, all I want to do is sleep. The stress of my panic attack should have knocked me out, but I've been tossing and turning ever since my head hit the pillow. When my cell phone lights up, I grab it from the nightstand. The screen reads, "Unknown," and I know it's Matt calling. I decline the call and turn the phone off. My mind races in a million different directions, stirring up even more memories. Unwilling to lie here in bed any longer, I grab the manifest and my notepad and go to the office to direct all my attention to this list. I've made it halfway through the names, scrambling the letters around and around and around. Not knowing what I'm looking for, but hoping I find something, I get through 3 more names. Parker Moore, Dorrance Riley, Quentin Malice. All are dead ends, and before the sun starts to rise, I sneak back into bed without Declan noticing. I manage to get a couple hours of sleep, and when I wake, Declan has already had breakfast delivered. The smell of his coffee and fresh-baked croissants fill the air, and before I'm fully awake, he pours me a cup of steaming water and hands me a tea bag. Thanks. While we sit in bed, Declan reads the newspaper and I watch as bistre ribbons through the translucent water in my teacup. Sleep still fogs my head as I continue to dunk the tea bag up and down until the water turns to a delicate amber, infused with aromatic herbs that help wake me up.
"He's in the paper," Declan murmurs.
"Who?" He hands the Chicago Tribune to me, and there he is, Callum. He stands in his prison-issued orange jumpsuit with the headline, "Player in gun trafficking ring indicted." I look to Declan as he takes a sip of his coffee, and he says,
"You know, it's only a matter of time until we're getting wrapped up in this."
"What do you mean?"
"Our involvement. You were married to Bennett, ran in the same circle as Richard, and spent time with my father. That, along with the kidnapping and murder, we'll both be forced to testify,"
he tells me before tossing the sheets off him and getting out of bed in haste.
"This is the last thing I need. That man tarnishing my name,"
he bites. He's pissed about the attention this will draw to him and his company. "Declan," I call out in a panic, my heart beginning to race when it suddenly hits me. "What about me?" He turns to look at me, becoming aware when he sees the anxiety in my eyes. "They'll dig into my history, and Nina only goes back so far. They'll know I'm a fraud," I blurt out in a pitchy voice. "I'll be charged with identity theft and embezzlement along with any other crime they can pin on me."
"Fuck,"
he grits under his breath. I guess it was inevitable that my con would eventually catch up with me. My mind goes into overdrive, thinking about how I could possibly finagle my way out of this, how I could possibly explain this away, but I can't hone in on anything. "What do we do?"
"I'll put in a call to my attorney," he tells me. "I don't want you to worry. We have time. It could take up to a year for this to even go to trial."
"What about you?"
"What about me?"
I slip out of bed and walk over to him. "It's you that tells me that I shouldn't hide from the things that hurt me."
"He doesn't hurt me,"
he immediately defends, but I call his bluff, saying, "He didn't even try to stop the murder of your mom. He stepped aside and just let it happen. So don't tell me that doesn't hurt you, Declan. I know it does." I reach out to him and place my hand over his heart. "You and I share the same soft spot, the same wound, the death of a parent." He covers my hand with his, and it's full of tension, squeezing me much too hard. He's in pain. "Declan."
Her bones are fragile in my grip as I fight against the agony that marks my soul in wounds that refuse to heal. And she's right. My mom has always been the weak link in my armor. She's the softest part of my heart, and anything that comes close to touching it pains me. But that pain is tainted by the fury I hold from my dad now that I know the part he played. I look down into Elizabeth's eyes and see the sorrow in them. She's called me on my shit, so there's only one option, unless I want her to see me as a hypocrite. "Let's go to New York, then."
"You're going to see him?"
she asks in surprise. "Yes, and then I'm done with him." I leave Elizabeth to drink her tea while I make the call to arrange the flight, and I'm told that we can make it out later tonight. When I return to the bedroom, I see her with that damn notepad. She thinks she's being sneaky and that I don't notice when she leaves my bed at night, but I do. The moment I lose the heat of her body, I wake up. I've chosen not to say anything, and to give her the time she feels she needs. Truth be told, Lachlan and I are hitting roadblock after roadblock. This man clearly doesn't want to be found, but one way or another, I will find him. For her. She sets the notepad and pencil on the bedside table when she sees me. "The plane will be ready at 7. I sit and wait, looking around the white cinder-block room filled with the city's disgraced and their loved ones. Guards stand and watch the interactions, making sure the rules that were explained in detail are being abided by. The metal door in the corner of the room opens, and this time it's my father who walks through. Donned in orange, he's escorted into the room, and the guard that's with him removes the shackles as my father's eyes find mine. He's expressionless. Once freed from the chains, he makes his way across the room. He looks hard, unshaven, and thinned out. "Son," he remarks evenly when he approaches the table. Animosity sparks as I look at this man who sits across from me. Memories of all the disdain he's spit my way throughout my life, only to evade his own wrongdoings, ignites rage inside me. "How did you find out?" "You haven't heard," I respond, and he shakes his head. "Your boss?" My boss. Keep playing dumb with me, I taunt. I know everything. I just want to hear you tell the truth for once in your life. Stop with the riddles, kid, and just tell me what you think you know. My hands fist. It's a futile attempt to control my fury, and I glare at him. I know about Mum. I know she died because of you. I loved that woman. His words, his flagrant lie, set me off, and I punched the table, losing control. You fucking bastard! Hey, one guard yells, calling me into check. She died because of you, I seethe, lowering my voice. Because of your greed, she had to pay the consequences. You don't know shit, kid. Admit it, I say. He shrugs his shoulders as if he's clueless and guiltless, and I can't stand to look at his smug face any longer, so I speed this up. You knew Richard was going to kill her. That's why you left the country, because you didn't want to be there when it happened. You were running from the guilt, weren't you? How do you know about Richard? You know he's dead, right? I ask, and he nods. I killed him. His eyes widen when I tell him this, and I smile proudly. Don't worry, Dad. Cops already know I did it. He doesn't respond to what I've just admitted to him. He simply stares at me, dumbfounded. Because of him, I know everything you've been hiding from me. Everything. He takes a hard swallow and hangs his head, succumbing to the truth because he has no other choice at this point. He can't bullshit me any longer. I know it all, Dad, I whisper harshly, digging the knife into him even deeper. And when he finally gets the balls to lift his head to look me in the eye, he says, Then you know what I'm facing. It's all over the news. His demeaning voice shifts to that of neediness. I need your help, son. Admit it first. Admit that you were the one responsible for Mum dying. I need your help, he deflects, talking quickly in a hushed tone. Camilla is my only line to the outside, aside from my lawyer, but I haven't talked to her in a week. I need your help to get in touch with Lachlan. Why? I can't tell you why, but I need to talk to him. About Camilla? Camilla? Why would I talk to him about her? He questions in utter confusion. What do you know? Only that your girlfriend has conflicting fidelities. I'm getting the feeling he does too, he murmurs, jaw clenched in anger. What's that supposed to mean? Ask him. I'm asking you, I say, as my irritation grows in sync with suspicions that I'm missing some important details about Lachlan. I needed to keep an eye on you when you left Chicago, he says cryptically. Tell me, because I need to know, who's Elizabeth Archer, and what the fuck is she doing at the Water Lily? That fucking bastard. I will kill Lachlan when I get back to London, because it's now apparent that whatever involvement he told me he has with my father is a lie. The only way my dad could get that information would be from him. But it's his mention of the water lily that has me curious when I think of the photo that Elizabeth found there. I'll tell you what you want to know, I say. But first, tell me what I should know about the water lily. He looks at me suspiciously, saying nothing. Why is there a picture of me there? I ask, giving him a bit of information to try to spur him into an answer. Because, he sighs, leaning forward. Tell me the truth. He looks at me for a moment before revealing. The woman who runs it. Isla. Yes, he says. She's your grandmother. What? Isla is your mother's mum. That doesn't make sense, I mutter. Why was she never around? Because she never approved of me dating her daughter. It was years of ups and downs, and when I married your mum, that's what finally severed them, the fact that your mother chose me. And even when Mum died, you never told me. What was there to tell? I stand, unable to continue this conversation or look at this man who has filled my life with countless lies. Son, stop avoiding and just tell me,
He remains seated, staring up at me. For a beat, I don't think he's going to answer, and my anger burns. Then he opens his mouth to speak. "Yes, I knew your mother would die, and I did nothing to stop it." And that's the dagger that spears into what Elizabeth calls the softest part of me. Blood from the wound that was created the day I watched her die pours out, drowning me, numbing me, debilitating me. My hands shake when I brace them on the edge of the table and tell him, "You'll never see me again. Declan, you're going to die in this shithole all alone, you motherfucker." I don't look back at him when I walk to the guard who stands at the exit, and I swear I leave a trail of blood in my wake from the wound he ripped wide open. When the guard pulls his keys to unlock the door, I hear my father call out, "Declan, come on, come back." And then commotion before a guard yells, "Sit down, McKinnon." "Declan!" More commotion. "Get the fuck off me!" "Get your ass on the ground, inmate!" "Declan!" "Another," I tell the bartender in the lounge of the hotel, and he pours me a shot of whiskey. I can't go back to the room just yet. I'm much too volatile. I've spent my whole life trying to measure up to my father's standards and prove to him that I'm man enough to persevere on my own in this world. And for what? It was all a lie that claimed my mother's life and mine. I lost a huge part of myself when she died, and was left with scars that no man should ever have to bear. The moment she died, I was blamed. It was me that wasn't man enough to save her, and my father spent his whole life making sure I knew I was the pussy he saw me for. He destroyed everything and has left me in this nightmare of realized deceit. "How did it go?" Elizabeth asks when I eventually walk through the door of the hotel room. I'm nothing but knotted up rage and anger and agony that alcohol can't even cure. I'm broken bones and bleeding wounds, empty and missing my mum like never before. My cold stone exterior masks the pansy I feel like. It shields the insecure man in me that wants to fall to his knees and have his girl hold on to him as he cries for all the years he's hidden behind strict control. And at the same time, I want to lash out, punch my fists through the walls, and spew the venom in my veins for all that son of a bitch has done to my life. "Are you okay?" I hear her say through the static of vehemence rushing under my skin. "Declan?" I bore my eyes into her, silently pleading to use her to expel my wrath onto. My hands fist, and I feel the vibrations in my flexed muscles when it all becomes too much to hold in. Her hands touch my clenched jaw, and she runs them down my trembling arms, all the while looking up at me so lovingly when I'm pouring out pure fury. She's a goddamn godsend when she perceives my reticence and gives me the permission I'm needing so badly. "Touch me." "I'll hurt you." "It's okay," she says so fucking sweetly. "Give me your pain so you don't have to feel it." I kiss her with blinding brutality, and she allows it. I'm a wolf, devouring her, clawing her, ripping her clothes off in a storm of violence. She stumbles back as I force my body against hers, pushing her to the ground. I stand above her naked body and breathe in broken pants. She's so small, milky white flesh, and ruby red hair, and she must be crazy to submit to me right now, but she does, saying, "Don't hold back." I strip, and she watches, inviting the beast to come out and play. I'm already rock hard, and when she sits up and wraps her delicate hand around my dick, it pulses and leaps in her grip. I slap her arm away. She lies back, and I reach down and flip her over. Kneeling above her, I grab a handful of her hair, yank it back, and strike her ass with my hand. She cries out, eliciting a heady arousal of power in me. Reaching for my pants, I rip the belt out from the loops and fasten it tightly around her arms, above the elbows. She squirms and emits little ragged gasps, and I raise my hand, letting it drop in a sharp slap across her ass again. It immediately welts as the blood rushes to the surface, making my dick even more thick and hot with need. She doesn't resist when I reach under her waist and jerk her ass up in the air and shove her knees under her so she's propped up like a fucking beauty. Tangling my hands into her hair, I shove the side of her face into the floor, and when I run the tip of my cock through her slick warmth, I realize she's ready for me, dripping wet. I slam my dick inside of her with raging force, and without any restraint, I fuck her licentiously hard. I grab a hold of the belt to use for leverage, and with each pounding thrust, I drive her body into the floor. My skin is covered in a sheen of sweat as I thrust my hips sharply, barraged by a million sensations all at once, blurring the edges of pain and pleasure. Elizabeth's yelps are muffled by the floor as I grunt freely into the air. I pull out and shove her over onto her back, watching her wince against the pain of lying on top of her arms, but I see her hidden mirth. She then lances her nails into my heart, making me love her even more when her lips lift in a faint smile, and she spreads her legs wider for me, inviting me to take more. I can't not be one with her. I hold my dick and slide into her swollen, ripe pussy. I still myself, and her needy body begins to clench around my shaft. Drawing back, I growl as I fuck her frantically, and the room fills with a requiem of moans, gasps, and grunts. Elizabeth bows her lithe body up to mine in an attempt to fuck me back. She's a fucking paradigm. My cock begins to swell in her, building in a vigor of ecstasy at the same time I sense Elizabeth's body tensing up, faltering in rhythm. She stares up at me, and I reach underneath her and find her hand. I hold it tightly in mine, needing her to know that she's safe to allow herself to fall apart with me, that we're in this together, in our most vulnerable states. Her eyes swim out of focus, and she draws in a tight breath before releasing an intoxicating moan, carnal and raw. Her pussy clamps in spasms around my dick. I buck into her, exploding, shooting my cum deep inside her, groaning in sync with her pleasure. Her hand squeezes mine as we ride out our orgasms together. She writhes under my body, drawing as much pleasure as she can from me, and I love how greedy she gets with me in these moments. When we're sweaty, sated, and completely out of breath, I roll us onto our sides and unbuckle the belt, and like all the times before, she clings her arms around my neck. My cock twitches as I keep it buried in her and band my arms around her body as she holds on to me. I'm sure she's unaware that I need her embrace more than she needs mine in this moment. She soothes me in a way no one has been able to, taking the toxins out of my bones and replacing them with her love. She fills me entirely, handing herself over so willingly for me to take whatever it is that I need, and she does it so perfectly. I pull my head back to look at her, and she nuzzles her forehead against mine, keeping her eyes closed. When I lean in and kiss her, open and deep, I gather her completely in my arms. She becomes desperate, and I meet her urgency to be closer. I bruise her, crashing my lips with hers, and we bleed. Like cannibals, we feed off each other, sharing the blood from our hearts, uniting us even more. Chapter 20. Elizabeth. Declan sits in quiet despair as we fly back to Chicago. I knew better than to push him to talk when he returned to the hotel last night. I could see the torment in his eyes, so I kept my mouth shut and handed myself over to him so he could use me for comfort. We spent the whole night on the floor together, naked and wrapped in each other's arms. He's been quiet all morning, and I've followed suit, returning the silence. I don't know what was said between him and Cal or how it ended, but I doubt it ended well. When I look over to him as he sits next to me, I find him staring at me intently. I want to ask him if he's okay, but I don't. Instead, I simply give him a subtle smile and squeeze his hand that's holding mine. He kisses the top of my head, and I close my eyes, using his shoulder for a pillow for the remainder of the flight. Declan has been down in his office on the ground floor of Lotus since we returned from New York, while I've stayed up in the penthouse. He's yet to speak to me, and I've been busying myself with the passenger manifest. Michael Ross, William Baxter, Clint Knorr, Ben Wexler. I've spent a couple hours on those names and have come up empty. Deciding to give myself a break, I call down to the kitchen and order some food, and then mindlessly flip through a few magazines. Minutes dissolve into hours, and when the sun begins its descent, I sit on the edge of the bed and watch. When the sun kisses the horizon, the bed dips beside me. We sit together in silence until the day shifts into night. "She's my grandmother." His slack voice cuts through the darkness, and when I turn my head to look at him, his eyes are focused on the sky. "Who?" I gently ask. "Isla," he reveals. "She's my mom's mother." "He told you that?" Declan nods. "I've had a piece of my mom here all along, and he never told me." There's longing in his voice, a feeling I'm no stranger to. "I'll never speak to that man again," he tells me when he finally looks my way. His eyes are flooded in pain, and it kills me to see him like this when he's always so pulled together. And in a rare moment, he stands in front of me before lowering to his knees, and then grips my hips and lays his head on my lap. My undeniably strong Declan, slayed to the core. Leaning over, I shield his body with mine. I can't sleep. Declan went to bed hours ago, but all I can do is toss and turn. My mind keeps drifting back to the past, and memories of my dad play in my head. Looking over at Declan, he looks so peaceful. I watch him as he sleeps, but it's impossible to ignore my stomach when it growls at me. Slipping out of bed, I pad across the room and shut the door quietly behind me. I head over to the kitchen and pull out a slice of cheesecake that room service delivered earlier. Grabbing my notepad and a list of passengers, I take a seat on the couch in the living room and begin working on the next name. Asher Corey. Looking at the name, I pick up a strawberry garnish from the plate and eat it, and another memory of my dad finds me again. "Happy birthday, Princess." "Daddy," I groan as I roll over in bed, rubbing the sleep dust out of my eyes with my hands. "Wake up, sleepyhead." I open my eyes to see my daddy sitting on the edge of my bed with a great big bundle of pink balloons and a smile on his face. "Am I 5 today?" "You are. You're getting so big, baby." "Then you can't call me baby if I'm so big." "I'll call you baby even when you're my age," he says. "Come on, get out of bed." I groan again, still sleepy, and he sets the weight that's tied to the bottom of the balloons on the floor and then reaches his hands out in an oversized gesture. I immediately squeal and throw the covers over my head. "The tickle monster is gonna get you," he teases in a playful monster voice, and I start laughing before he even gets me. When his fingers get a hold of me, I squeal and squirm with loud giggles. "Daddy, stop!" "Say the magic word," he says in a sing-song voice as he continues to tickle me. "Abracadabra. Please, hocus pocus," I ramble off, saying everything I can think of, and then he stops. My belly hurts from all the laughing, and I have to catch my breath. "Are you getting up?" "Yes, Daddy." "Breakfast in 10 minutes, Princess. Get ready, and don't forget to brush your teeth," he tells me as he stands and walks to my bedroom door. "Oh, wait, I forgot something." I get out of bed as he walks back to me. He lifts me up, and I wrap my arms and legs around him like a monkey when he starts kissing my neck. The prickles from his beard tickle me, and I laugh. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, birthday girl," he says before setting me back on my feet. "Now get dressed." Because it's my birthday, I decide to wear as many colors as I can find in my dresser. And when I'm ready and my teeth are brushed, I run out into the kitchen. Pancakes! And whipped cream, he adds. I take a seat at the table in front of a ginormous stack of pancakes, but before he puts the whipped cream on them, he says, "Open up." He holds the can over my head, so I lean back, open my mouth, and he squirts my mouth full of whipped cream. When does my party start? Your friends will be here at noon, so I need to get started on your birthday cake as soon as we're finished with breakfast. You're making the strawberry cake, right? Of course. It's your favorite, isn't it? Yes, strawberries are my super-duper favorite, I exclaim. I begin eating my pancake tower, but it doesn't take long for my belly to get full. I play with my dolls in the living room while Daddy cleans up, and when he's done, he calls me back into the kitchen. Did you want to help me with the cake? Yes, I say excitedly, and then drag one of the chairs from the table over to the counter and climb up. He pulls out all the ingredients from the pantry and fridge and helps me fill measuring cups that I dump into a big bowl. Once the cake batter is made, he lets me lick the spoon and bowl as he puts the pan into the oven. While it's baking, we play a couple games of Go Fish and watch Saturday morning cartoons. The timer goes off, and we return to the kitchen. Is it time for the strawberry slime? I ask. Yep. As Daddy prepares the strawberry gelatin, he lets me stab the holes in the cake with a toothpick. When the gelatin starts to thicken a little, I help him pour it over the cake. He puts it into the fridge to set before we go outside to play in the backyard. Will you push me high? I ask when I run over to the swing set. You don't want to do it on your own? Not today. He pushes me, and when I call out, "Higher," he says, "What if I push you into the clouds?" That's silly, Daddy. That can't happen. We spend a good amount of time playing outside, and when we're done and the cake is ready, he lets me frost it with strawberry icing. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, you know that, he tells me as I smear on the icing. Am I your favorite? My super-duper favorite, but I need you to make me a promise, he says. I need you to promise me that you'll stop growing up so fast. How do I stop growing? Well, he says with animation, I guess I'll have to stop feeding you. I giggle. You can't do that. What if I get hungry? What are we going to do then? I don't want to be little forever, though. I want to be great big, just like you. Just like me? Yep, just like you, because you're my favorite thing in the whole wide world, I tell him, and then lean over to kiss his nose. You're my favorite too, Princess Pie, he tells me, and then gives me a kiss on my nose as well. So I guess I won't starve you. Here, he says, taking the rubber spatula out of my hand. I always get the first lick. I laugh when he licks some of the pink frosting. He hands it back to me, saying, Enjoy. And I begin licking the strawberry icing. I take another bite of the strawberry as my heart aches at the memory of the last birthday I had with him, and get back to the next name on the list. Asher Corey. I stare at the letters and begin scrambling them. Shore Rare Sea. Hero Cracer. I take a bite of cheesecake and continue. I know this is nonsense. I'm not even sure what I'm trying to decode, but it makes me feel better than doing nothing. I continue to stare at the letters. My little Princess Pie, he says again as I lick the frosting. My little Elizabeth Archer. Blank S, blank blank blank, blank O, blank R-E, A-H-E-R-C-R. Oh my God, I murmur, and then unscramble the letters. Archer? My pulse picks up as I stare at the letters that spell my last name, his last name. I then look at the remaining letters. S-O-R-E. Tears prick my eyes and my hands tremble. I take another lick of the sweet frosting, and he ruffles my hair with his hand, continuing his doting, saying, My little Elizabeth Rose Archer. Rose. Asher Corey. Rose Archer. "Oh my God," I blurt out as I lurch off the couch, covering my mouth with my two hands. My heart beats rapidly as I stare down in shock at the notepad where my middle and last name look up at me. This can't be a coincidence. It's him. And suddenly I can hear his voice so clearly. "My little Elizabeth Rose Archer." "Declan!" I holler, grabbing the notepad and running across the penthouse. I sling the bedroom door open, waking him up when it slams against the door jamb. "Declan! It's him! It's him!" He leaps out of bed, still half asleep.
"What's going on?"
"It's my dad!" I cry out. "Look!" I show him the notepad, and he takes it from my hand.
"What am I looking at?"
He questions at the paper that's filled with so many names, and I point to Asher Corey. "That's him. The letters in that name spell Rose Archer."
"Who's Rose?"
I look up at him, tears streaming down my cheeks, and I can barely breathe when I tell him, "Me." He stares at me, confusion etching his face, and I claim without a shred of doubt, "My name is Elizabeth Rose Archer, and that man is my dad." Chapter 21.
"There's a listing for an A. Corey in Washington,"
Declan tells me from behind his laptop.
"Gig Harbor, Washington. There's no more information."
"In Washington? Is that him?"
"Only one way to find out," he says. "I had the plane scheduled to take us back to London, so I'll have to wait until morning to call and get it rescheduled."
Adrenaline intoxicates me, putting my body on high alert. My heart pounds, begging me to strap on my shoes and run across the country to get to my dad, because waiting seems like an impossible feat. I pace the room, and when that dulls, I pack my bags, and when that's done, I get on Declan's computer and search every social media site and People Finder database to see if anything pops up. Nothing, aside from what Declan had found. City and state. That's it. The night drags on, testing every ounce of patience in me. Seconds feel like hours and hours feel like years, and after an eternity, the sun rises. Declan is beyond demanding when he calls to reschedule the plane, and I feel sorry for the poor sap that's on the other end of the line. He barks his orders, and when he hangs up, tells me, "Grab the bags." "We're leaving now?"
"Yes."
We move at lightning speed as we get all our belongings together, but it's still not fast enough for my growing anxiety. Thank God for his private jet, because the flight takes less than 4 hours. Once we're settled into our hotel suite in Tacoma, I ask, "Now what?"
"Now we need to find a way to get to his address."
"How far is Gig Harbor from here?"
20 minutes or so. Not far," he tells me.
I sit and think, and it doesn't take but a couple minutes for the idea to pop into my head. "Can you look up the utility companies in that town?" I ask Declan, who is already on his laptop. I walk over and stand behind him while he looks up the information for me. He pulls up the number, and I quickly punch it into my cell phone and send the call. "City of Gig Harbor," a lady answers. "Yes, I'm calling on behalf of my brother, Asher Corey. He's been in an accident and is currently in the hospital and unresponsive. We don't know when he's going to pull out of his current state, so I wanted to make sure that his bill is up to date," I lie, and when I look to Declan, he gives me a smirk at my quick thinking. "What was the name again? Asher Corey?" I hear her typing at her keyboard before saying, "Yes, our records show that there is currently a zero balance." "Oh, good," I respond. "In the meantime, would it be possible to have a paper copy of his bill mailed to the house? I know he pays online, but since I don't have access to his passwords, I want to make sure that I can pay via snail mail." "Of course, yes, we can definitely have the bill mailed out to you." "Great. And just to make certain, can you tell me the address you have on file?" "I'm showing 19203 Fairview Lane with a zip code of 98332. "That's correct. Thank you so much for your help." I hang up, and Declan asks,
Did you get it?"
"That was too easy, and that woman was too trusting," I respond, and then hand him the paper with the address. He punches it into his computer.
"There it is."
"Let's go," I blurt with excitement, anxious to see if it's really him.
"Hold on," he says. "We can't just go showing up on his doorstep. He's hiding from something or someone, so we need to be careful for his sake and also yours."
He's right. I need to slow down for a second and think this through.
"I think we should get in the car and drive by. Check the place out. We need to verify that this is indeed your father first."
Okay. I'll agree to just about anything at this point. We're back in the car and driving to the address we were given, and soon enough, we're pulling into a nice suburban neighborhood with large New England-style coastal houses lining the streets. Children are outside riding bikes and playing, and people are walking their dogs. Everyone looks happy, enjoying the last hours of the afternoon before the sun sets. Declan slows the car when he turns onto Fairview, but doesn't stop as we pass the house.
"It's this one, the 2-story colonial," he says.
I look out the windshield at the beautiful house, and my stomach knots when I think about that being my father's home.
"I say we give it a couple hours, let it get darker, and then we come back. Maybe we can catch him coming home from work."
Anxiety mixed with every other emotion swarms in the pit of my gut. How can this possibly be happening when I've spent my whole life mourning his death? And now there's a possibility that I might see him tonight, that he could be alive. It's too much for me to understand and digest.
"Elizabeth."
My throat restricts like a vice around the sadness inside, and I simply look at him and nod my approval to his plan. We kill time and head to a local coffee joint. Declan makes a few business calls while I sip a hot tea and read some local Gazette magazine with all the town's happenings. We drove around for a bit before stopping here, and it seems like a quaint place to live. There isn't much, and everything is really spread out, but the neighborhoods are nice.
"We should get going," Declan says,
and I quickly order another tea to go. Very few words have been spoken today. My emotions are much too high to talk, and Declan hasn't pushed for conversation, which I appreciate. I need the silence right now. Hopping back into the inconspicuous 4-door car that Declan rented, we head back over to the house. This time, when we enter the neighborhood, the sidewalks are empty and the streetlights are on. Windows are lit while the families that live inside are probably eating their dinners, and when we pull up to what we think is my dad's home, a few rooms are lit up as well. We park along the curb on the opposite side of the street, and I stare into the windows, hoping to see something. "Someone is in there," I whisper.
I don't see any movement, but I agree. Too many lights are on for nobody to be home.
No cars are in the driveway, but that doesn't mean there aren't any in the garage. What do we do?
"We wait," Declan responds. "See if anyone comes out, or if anyone comes home."
So that's what we do. We sit. We wait. My mind doesn't, though. It keeps spinning thoughts around, plucking at my heartstrings. They swirl in a kaleidoscope of what-ifs, so many that I can't keep them inside. So I ask Declan, what if he's married? My voice trembles in despair. I mean, this is too big a house for just one person, right? Declan looks at me and takes my hand, his face mottled in sorrow, and after a span of silence, he responds,
"It's possible."
I look at the clock. It's past 8. We've been sitting out here for hours when bright headlights beam our way.
"Elizabeth,"
Declan murmurs urgently when the SUV pulls into the driveway. I hold my breath as my heart pounds rapidly against my chest, the sound filling my ears. Leaning forward, I see the driver's side door open, and when a man steps out, his back is to me. He reaches into the car and pulls out a briefcase at the same time the front door swings open and a young girl comes running out. And when that man turns around, I choke back an audible gasp, gripping Declan's hand tightly.
"That's him,"
he voices with a look of pure astonishment. But I'm in a state of shock when I see my daddy pull this child into his arms and hug her. "Dad, why are you so late?" I hear her muffled voice from outside the car ask him, and tears force their way down my cheeks like knives.
"I'm sorry, Princess. I got tied up with a client," he says,
and I remember his voice like it was just this morning when I heard it last. But it was me that was his princess. Everything plays in slow motion, and when I look at his face from across the street, there isn't an ounce of uncertainty he's my dad. It's that same face, the same eyes, the same smile that visits me in my dreams. Except now he's older with a head of silver hair. The last time I saw him, he was in his 30s, and now he's nearing 60. But that smile, the smile he gives that girl, his daughter, that was mine. It was always mine, and now it's hers. I swore to myself that if I ever found him, I'd run to him, grab him, and never let him go. But when I see a woman and a boy walking out of the house, it's another slap in my face. He's no longer mine to run to. He's theirs. It becomes too much. I can't believe life would do this to me. I want to die. "Drive," I cry, my voice shaky and unrecognizable. But Declan doesn't start the car.
"Elizabeth."
"Get me out of here," I plead. He releases my hand and starts the car, and as soon as he begins driving, I split wide open and sob, loud and ugly. "Oh my God, Declan, he has a daughter. He has a whole family." He reaches over to me and pulls my hand into his lap as all the years of longing burn up in roaring flames. I was disposed of by my dad. I don't exist in his life. How could he do this? How could he replace me? Not only did my mother not want me, but I never thought my dad would feel the same way. "I thought he loved me," I cry, and the tears feel like hot splashes of acid as they coat my cheeks and drip from my chin. The pain overwhelms like a cleaver to my heart, and everything I thought I knew feels like pure deception. I feel worthless and unloved by the man I've killed for. I never gave up on life because of him. I kept going because of him. It was all for naught, though. He's moved on when 23 years later I'm still living for him, dreaming of him, longing for him. To feel like a nobody to the person who's your everybody is a jagged spike that skewers through the scar tissue of every one of life's blows that mark a permanent wound on my soul. Suddenly this car is suffocating. It's too small. My skin is too tight. The air is too thick. I can't breathe. "Pull over," I demand, and he does instantly. Ripping off my seatbelt, I leap out of the car and run. I don't know where I'm going, but I run as fast as I can. I run hard, feet pounding the grass under my feet as I zip across a random field. "Elizabeth!" Declan's voice echoes behind me, but I don't slow. My legs begin to burn, my lungs are on fire, but I keep going. I can hear Declan's feet racing behind me, and I push harder, screaming out my pain. I force it out of my lungs and into the night. The air whips through my hair, and the tears on my face chill against the wind. "Elizabeth!" he calls again before his hand clutches my arm, sending me tumbling to the ground. With my hands pressed against Earth's foundation, I tilt my head up to the heavens I can no longer believe in and scream. I scream so hard it hurts, ripping through my vocal cords, searing them, slicing them. Declan wraps his whole body around mine, every one of his muscles flexing, cocooning me in a steel vice grip. And when my screams strain into an unbearable bleeding agony, I melt and crumple into Declan's warm body. And I cry. I cry like I did when I was 5 years old and watched my daddy as he was being handcuffed and taken from me. I cry because that's what you do when the person you love most in this world doesn't love you back. Declan strokes my hair, petting me while he presses his lips to my ear, whispering gently, "Shh, baby." I allow my mind to focus on his touch, on his smell, and on the sound of his voice. He rocks me in a slow sway, comforting me, and I grip my hands to his back, fisting his shirt with my fingers. And through my cries, I ask, "Why did he do this to me?" "I don't know, darling," he responds, "but we'll find out. I'll get you answers." "I don't understand why he never came for me. He's been alive this whole time, my whole life, and he never came for me." "Maybe it's not what you think," he says, and I look into his eyes and weep. "How could you not come back for your child?" He doesn't say anything else. He's probably scared he'll dig the knife in deeper. Instead, he stands and scoops me up in his arms, cradling me against his chest. As he walks us back to the car, I rest my head in the crook of his neck and let the tears fall. He puts me into the car, buckles me in, and not another word is spoken. When we arrive back at our hotel room, he takes over. I'm dead inside, so he bathes me, brushes my teeth, and puts me to bed, all in silence, all while I cling to him, because without him, I don't exist, and I need to exist. Chapter 22. I'm walking along a busy city street. I'm not sure what city I'm in, but it's filled with noisy cars and too many people to count. I don't know where I'm going, but I go. I follow the crowds. Maybe they know where they're headed. We all stop at an intersection and wait for the crosswalk sign to light up. Leaning against a large flower bed that hugs the perimeter of a tall building, I look down to see pink daisies. I grab one of the stems, pluck it from the soil, and watch as a little caterpillar emerges. I smile when I see my friend. "There you are, Elizabeth," he greets in his British accent. "Carnegie." I lower my hand for him to crawl onto and then lift him up to my face. "I've missed you," I tell him. "It's been much too long." I stumble on my feet when a bicyclist nearly sideswipes me. Looking back to my hand, Carnegie is no longer there. I scramble, skittering my eyes along the sidewalk, turning in circles. "Carnegie?" I call out, but he's nowhere to be found. I'm jostled again, this time by a man as he rushes past me. "Hey!" I shout, and when the man turns to apologize, I see his face. "Dad?" "Sorry, miss," my father says as if he doesn't recognize me. "Dad, it's me." He turns, no longer acknowledging me, and I chase after him. "Dad, wait! It's me!" He's only walking, but somehow the gap between us widens, and I'm losing him. I whip around a corner and nearly lose my footing. When I right myself, I catch my reflection in the mirrored glass of a building. I'm 5 years old and still wearing my glittery princess dress from our last tea party. Turning back in the direction my father was heading, I run while continuing to call out to him. I weave through the crowds of people, dodging elbows and pushing my way through. "Daddy!" I finally catch up to him when he's stuck at a crosswalk. "Dad," I say when I walk up to him. He looks down at me with an aged face and silver hair. "Little girl, are you lost?" "No, Daddy. It's me, your daughter." He shakes his head. "No, little girl." He then points his finger to a blonde-haired child across the street waving at him. "That's my daughter over there." I wake with a start. The room is black. My heavy breaths are the only sounds I hear. I roll over, my body numb. Declan is sound asleep, and when I slide out of bed to get a drink of water, I see that it's 5 a.m. I'm rattled by my dream as I sip from a bottle of water while I sit in the living room. I stare out the window at the full moon, and it feels strange to know that only 20 minutes away, the same moon hangs above my dad, although I doubt I ever cross his mind like he crosses mine. I think about the girl in my dream, the same girl I saw him call Princess last night in his driveway. She was young, maybe 8 or so. And the more I think about her, the more my hands tingle in acerbic bitterness. Vile thoughts run rampant, thoughts of kidnapping her, thoughts of killing her. My legs shake erratically, bouncing up and down at a rapid pace. I can't sit still. They're out there. He's out there. And I'm stuck in this hotel room. Thoughts about his new family fester. I peer at Declan through the bedroom door, and he's still fast asleep. Gently, I close the door after slipping on a pair of pants and a top. Grabbing the keys to the car, I quietly sneak out of the room. He's going to be pissed when he wakes up to find that I'm gone, but if I told him what I'm about to do, he'd refuse. And I can't just sit in that room and drive myself crazy. Once I'm in the car, I drive back to Gig Harbor and park along the street a few houses down from my dad's. His SUV is no longer in the driveway where he parked it last night. I'm not even sure what I'm doing here. Time passes, the sun makes her appearance, and eventually the garage door opens. A car begins to back out and then stops halfway down the driveway. I sink down, worried I'll be seen, but keep watching. The driver's side window rolls down and the woman I saw last night hangs her head out and hollers, "Come on, kids!" A few beats later, the blonde girl and the brown-haired boy run out from the garage with backpacks hanging from their shoulders. They hop in the back seat, and when the car starts driving away, I sit up and follow. When we turn out of the neighborhood, I make sure to follow with one car between us. Hate rises in my soul for these people that my father's chosen over me. Good or bad, I don't give a shit. I want to hurt them. I want to take them away from him. Then maybe he'll be so lonely that he'll finally want me. My knuckles are white as my hands choke the steering wheel so hard it just might snap. The car pulls off into a strip shopping center, and I follow, parking several spots down from them. The kids hop out of the car, cash in their hands, and run into a smoothie shop while the woman stays in the vehicle. Without much thought, and honestly just not caring, I get out of my car. I walk past the woman and see she's paying no attention as she's chatting away on her phone. She's blonde as well, and appears many years younger than my dad, and I wish I had a brick to throw through her windshield to smash her pretty little face. The bell above the door jingles when I step inside the smoothie shop. The 2 kids are watching the blenders mix up their drinks. "What can I get for you this morning?" the guy behind the register asks in a much too peppy tone for it being so early in the morning. I pick a random drink from the menu on the wall and shove him some cash. "Haley?" one of the employees calls out, and the girl runs to grab her drink. Her name's Haley. How fucking precious. When I see her walking to the door, I fake clumsiness and bump into her, sending her smoothie to splatter all over the floor. "Oh, I am so sorry. I wasn't paying any attention at all." "It's okay," she says. "Accidents happen." I grab a wad of napkins, and with her help, we do our best to clean up the sticky mess. "Let me get you another drink. What flavor did you have?" I offer. "You don't have to do that. I can get more money from my mom." I insist. She tells me her drink, and I place the order. I reach out my hand and introduce myself. "I'm Erin, by the way." She shakes my hand enthusiastically and giggles, saying, "My name is Haley." "I'm going back out to the car," her brother announces as he takes his smoothie with him to the exit. "Hurry up. I don't want to be late to school." "And that," Haley says, "is my annoying older brother, Steve." Steve. My dad passed his name down to that little fucker. "You look like you're all ready for school. What grade are you in?" I ask while we wait for her drink. "5th grade." "Wow, big girl on campus. So how old does that make you?" 11. Her perfect voice, her perfect hair, her perfect clothes all make me want to ball my fist up and slam it through her perfect smile. "Haley," the employee calls out, and I fight the overwhelming urge to grab her and run. "I gotta go. Thanks for the smoothie, Erin." She's so polite, it irritates me to the point I want to claw my own skin from my bones. She practically skips out the door, leaving me to watch their car as it pulls out and drives away. I snap around when there's a tap on my shoulder.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you, the employee says as he holds out a cup. I called your name, but I guess you didn't hear me.
Without a word, I turn away from him and walk out the door as he stands there like an asshole, still holding my drink. I hate everyone in this shit town. Sitting in my car, I can't bring myself to drive just yet. She's 11 years old and has the life I was supposed to have. I was supposed to be the bubbly and polite girl who wore the pretty clothes and grabbed a smoothie before heading off to school. I was supposed to be her. Instead, when I was 11, I was tied up to a garment rod and locked away in a closet for days on end. I was in the darkness with no food or water, left to piss and shit on myself. And when I wasn't in the closet, I was down in that dank basement being molested, raped, sodomized, pissed on, beaten, and whipped. I wasn't skipping out the goddamn door with my raspberry paradise smoothie. Her biggest struggle in life is having an annoying older brother. I should have grabbed her when I had the chance. Anger does nothing but ferment in my bones. It aches and pricks from the inside out, and I ball my hands, pounding them against the steering wheel as I growl between my clenched teeth. When I look up, I see an elderly lady staring at me in horror as she walks on by. She has no idea that she's staring at a monster. Smoothing my hair back off my forehead, I straighten myself and start the car. It's edging on 8 o'clock, and I need to get back to the hotel. I stand outside of our room and prepare myself for the wrath of Declan before opening the door.
Where the fuck have you been?
He seethes as soon as I walk in.
Tell me it's not what I'm thinking. Tell me you didn't go back to that house.
Keeping my cool so I don't rile him up any more than he already is, I admit. I went back to the house.
Jesus Christ. What were you thinking?
He snaps, grabbing my arms and shaking me. I don't know, but I had to go. I knew you wouldn't allow it, so I snuck out. He shoves me over to the couch and pushes me down, releasing my arms. I watch as he paces the room a couple times before walking back over to me. He takes a seat on the coffee table and faces me. His jaw is locked, a tell to his immense anger. I knew how much my sneaking away would affect him. Declan has to hold all the power for him to feel safe, and I stole that from him this morning. It's not what you think. I attempt to mollify him.
Tell me, since you seem to know everything about me. Tell me what it is I'm thinking.
He throws his derisive words in my face. I had to see them. I had to know more.
Them?
He questions, growing more irritated.
You mean his kids?
I nod.
Christ, Elizabeth,
he barks, standing and walking away from me. Stop yelling at me, I snap, getting off the couch and stepping up to him. You're pissed, I get it, but the expectation you have for me to just sit and be patient is something I can't do.
You can't, or you won't.
I'm not apologizing if that's what you're after. I watch him grind his teeth as he glares down at me, and I turn this around on him, saying, Why don't you tell me something? If this were reversed, and it were your mother in this situation, tell me you'd be okay just hanging back. Tell me you wouldn't act on every single one of your instincts. His eyes pierce mine, and I push him even more. Tell me you could restrain yourself and stay away. We meet each other's opposition, neither one of us backing down. He's my dad, so don't you dare yell at me and belittle me for acting on my desperation, because you'd do the same thing. I turn to walk away from him, and when I do, he finally speaks.
You won't defy me again. Do you understand?
I look back at him and respond. Then I need you to bend and trust me. I snuck away because I knew you'd refuse to allow me to go. All I'm asking is for you to at least try to see things my way every once in a while.
Come here,
he orders, and I obey, walking back over to him. He takes my face in his hands, telling me,
I'll try and bend for you.
Thank you, I respond with an appeased smile.
You will be punished, so I wouldn't be smiling if I were you,
he threatens, and I don't contest. Declan needs this to feel in control, and I want to give him that because it's what secures him. He depends on it. He can't function without it.
I want you on the ground on all fours with your pants pulled down to your knees."
He lashes his voice out in anger, and I turn my back to him, positioning myself as instructed. It might be debasing for most, but I understand his need for this. It's how his life has molded him to be, and I'm the perfect one to give him this outlet that he's been deprived of in the past. I'm sure the women he's been with previously have valued their bodies in a way I don't, and because I love him so much, I have no problem handing myself over to him in this way. I hear him move around the room, and then he kneels down in front of me to tie my wrists together with one of his ties.
"Tell me why I'm punishing you."
I crane my neck to look at him and answer, "Because I snuck off and took the control away from you."
"Do you know what that did to me?"
"Yes." He then stands and moves behind me.
"Keep your eyes on the floor,"
he commands, and I hear something rattling before being set on the ground.
"Spread your knees."
I do, and I'm instantly greeted by the piercing pain of an ice cube being shoved into my pussy, and then another, and another, and another, and another. I cry out in blistering pain, and then he begins to spank my ass with a force so great I have to tense my whole body up to keep myself from falling over. The ice feels like I'm being sliced with razors from the inside, and I know I should be focusing on the pain that's radiating from my ass, because it's so minimal compared to what's happening inside my pussy. With each welting blow he delivers, I scream out as the ice begins to melt and the water spills out of me and runs down my thighs.
"Tell me you're my property,"
he grits, and I instantly respond, "I'm your property."
Thwack. "Tell me who owns you."
"You own me."
Thwack. "Tell me you love me."
"I love you, Declan."
Thwack. "On your elbows," he barks, and the moment I lower myself, his mouth is on my pussy, sucking out the melted ice from inside me. His hot tongue is an erotic contrast to the freezing shards, and I let go of a heady moan while he buries his face between my legs. My mind rushes in waves of mania at the infliction of a multitude of sensations that I didn't even notice that he's now fucking me with his cock. I close my eyes when the whole world blurs, and all that matters is this moment, having our two bodies blended as one, and it's only together that we're whole. Chapter 23. The ice bucket and tie still remain on the floor from earlier. Declan has refused to let me clean myself up, so I sit and wait for him to finish his shower. I decide to log onto the laptop and search to see if Haley has any social media accounts. When no hits come up, I move on to search her brother, Steve, which brings me to a link for a Steve Corey in Gig Harbor, Washington. Clicking the link, I pull up his page. His profile picture is of him and a few of his buddies. I start clicking on different tabs on his page, but there's no real information aside from his birthday, which lets me know he's 13 years old. It's not until I open one of his photo albums that the vile hate from earlier resurfaces. I scroll through picture after picture of family photos, my dad being in most of them. Photos of family vacations, birthday parties, holidays fill the albums. All the things I never got a chance to experience. Once I was in Posen with Pike, I never got a birthday party. And most holidays, I'd find myself locked in the closet so Carl and Bobby wouldn't have to deal with me. Pike would always manage to steal or use his drug money to buy me something small, but aside from those private gift exchanges in my bedroom, we never celebrated anything. I despise these kids for the life my dad has given them, the life I never had. I look at their smiles, and I want to slit their throats. And then there's my dad. Enlarging a photo with him in it, I zoom in on his face. His eyes are still the same, even though the crinkles in the corners from when he smiles have deepened. He no longer has the scruff of a beard, exchanging it for a clean-shaven face. When I close my eyes, I can see the younger him in vivid color. I can hear his laughter. I can smell his cologne. God, I miss him so much. Opening my eyes, I'm greeted by this stranger who wears the same face. I don't know this man, Asher Corey.
My heart double beats in love and anger. I love my dad, the man who danced with me, sang to me, and laughed with me. But I hate this man on the computer screen. I hate him for wearing the mask of my father, because he's nothing like my dad. My dad loved me beyond love. And this man, I don't even exist in his world. I'm nothing but an evaporated memory.
"What are you looking at?"
Declan questions when he walks into the room, fresh from the shower, dressed in navy slacks, a fitted light blue button-down, and the same black belt he used to restrain me a few days ago. "Looking at family portraits," I respond, and he tilts his head in curiosity. When he sits next to me, I can smell the cardamom from his shampoo. Even in the midst of everything going on around us and our quarrel this morning, I feel the need to be close to him. He is already sliding the computer from my lap when he asks,
"Where did you find these?"
"It's his son's social media page."
"His son? How did you even know how to find this?"
"Because I followed them. I got his name from his sister, Haley."
"I need you to tell me what happened this morning."
"Can you control your anger?" I snark, to which he responds,
"You're testing your limits today with that smart mouth of yours. Tell me what happened."
I go through everything that occurred, from following the car to what was said between Haley and me.
"You shouldn't have ever approached that girl," he scolds. "She's just a kid."
"There are worse monsters out there than me, Declan. If I could handle my life at 11, then surely she can handle a conversation in a smoothie shop."
"That girl is a part of your dad."
I look at him, angry that he would go there, and snap, "But I'm all of him."
"I'm on your side here."
"Then stop defending that family."
"I need you to see things rationally, though," he says.
"Nothing about this whole situation is rational, Declan." He backs off and turns his attention back to the computer, scrolling through the photos. When there's one I want to look at, I tell him to stop. It isn't until a few more photos pass that I realize the kid tags his location when he posts. "Scroll slowly," I murmur to Declan when I lean in to get a closer look.
"What are you doing?"
"He tags his location in his pictures," I tell him, and we strike gold. "Stop. Click on that one." Declan enlarges a photo of my dad and his son that has the comment, "Spending my day at work with Dad."
"Enterprise Brokerage and Realty,"
Declan reads off. Declan opens up another window and types the business name into the search bar, and up pops their website with my father's picture on the main page.
"He runs his own firm," he says. "We've got a point of contact now."
"Do we just call him?"
"No. We need to find a way to get him to come to us. But, listen, we have to be careful about this. Whatever he's hiding from is big. I mean, your caseworker, a state employee, came to you and told you he died. The man even has a gravesite, right?"
"Yes, in Illinois," I say. "I went to the cemetery. He has a gravestone and everything."
"So this isn't some man who just skipped town. This is a man who needed to kill his identity."
"How do we do this?" Declan takes a moment to think and then pulls out his phone.
"I'll just schedule a meeting with him. There's nothing that links you and me that he would be able to find out about. We've never even been photographed together."
I nod, and when he dials, I tell him, "Put it on speakerphone," because I need to hear his voice. With each ring, my pulse quickens, and then the line connects. "Enterprise Brokerage and Realty, how can I help you?"
"Is Asher Corey available?"
Declan asks, his accent seeming to catch the woman off guard. "Oh, yes. Whom shall I say is calling?" she says, and I roll my eyes at Declan when her whole voice changes in reaction to his voice.
"You can tell him this is Declan McKinnon with McKinnon International Development."
"Just one moment." I'm practically holding my breath while we wait, and then he picks up the call, his voice crystal clear.
"Asher Corey here."
I bring my hands to cover my mouth when I hear the voice I never thought I'd hear again.
"Good afternoon. This is Declan McKinnon, owner of McKinnon International Development. I have to excuse the short notice, but I'm in town for a few days. and was hoping to discuss a possible land purchase for commercial development. What line of commercial development are you in? Hospitality on the high-end scale. So I see. I just pulled you up on my computer. McKinnon. Is that of Scottish descent? He asks Declan, and I can't believe he's actually having a conversation with my dad. Declan responds, and then my father continues. I can start pulling some locations to email you. Call me old-fashioned, but I hope you don't mind my preference to conduct business in person, rather than over the phone. I want to establish that you're the right man to be working with. After all, if a purchase is made, you'll be receiving a substantial commission. I want to make sure it's going to someone with integrity. I couldn't agree with you more. I'll tell you what, how does your evening look tonight? I have a few emails that need attending to, but other than that, I'm free. Would 6 o'clock work? That works. I've had a tiring couple of days, so why don't we meet at the Pearl's Edge, where I'm staying? I'm in the presidential suite. He doesn't even hesitate when he responds, I'll see you at 6, Mr. McKinnon. I watch Declan end the call and set the phone down. His voice, I start, and then lose my words. Are you okay? I can't speak for a while as I try to digest hearing my father on the phone. It doesn't even feel real, and to know that he'll be here in only a few hours is something I'm unable to process. Darling. I never thought I'd hear that voice again. I believed it was gone forever, and now... I know. You don't have to try to put it into words. I don't even know how to feel. One minute I'm relieved he's alive, and the next I'm so furious. But now he's coming here, and I'm excited and terrified. There's no right way to feel. I think the most important thing is to allow yourself to feel it all, he says. I just need you to hold me right now, I tell him. I curl up in his arms and close my eyes, while he runs his hands up and down my back. I open myself up to his comfort and take all I can. It's a myriad of extremities in my heart and head, but somehow, Declan is powerful enough to temper the storm in me. His warmth is able to relax me enough that eventually I drift off, and when I wake, he's still holding me. I look out the windows and see the sky rippled in waves of pinks and oranges. How are you feeling? Declan asks softly. My voice is sleepy when I respond, That's a hard question to answer. He leans down and kisses me. Why don't you freshen up before he gets here? What does one wear when they meet their dead father for the first time after 23 years? After I shower, I dig through my suitcases that I never got around to unpacking yesterday and pull out a pair of black pants and a flowy green top. I busy myself, focusing on making sure I look nice for him. Maybe it's me subconsciously distracting myself. Or maybe it's because I honestly want to look pretty for my dad. I don't really know. I dry my hair and fix it with free-flowing waves and then apply my usual light makeup and sweep a little gloss across my lips. I slip on a pair of black flats before giving myself a look-over in the mirror. My stomach twists in nervousness. I have no idea what I'm going to say to him or how I'm going to react. I've dreamt endlessly about magically getting my dad back, and now that it's here and it's real, I'm suddenly terrified. You look perfect. When I turn to Declan leaning against the threshold, I give him a tight smile. Are you sure? I ask, suddenly feeling self-conscious. I know you're nervous and worried, but try not to psych yourself out. What if I can't do this? And what if you can? He counters. Come here. I walk into his arms and hold on to him. You're trembling, he notes. Why don't I get you a drink to help with your nerves? I follow him into the living room, and before we make it over to the wet bar, there's a knock on the door. Stopping dead in my tracks, all the air is sucked out of my lungs, and I'm momentarily paralyzed. Declan looks back to me, and I'm in shock. That's him. Chapter 24. My whole body freezes, and I swear my heart skips a beat or two. I'm wide-eyed as Declan looks at me. I can't speak. My skin pricks and goosebumps.
Declan places his hands on my cheeks and tells me with surefire intensity, "You can do this." Nodding my head, I speak around the lump lodged in my throat. "Don't let go of me." "I won't." Hand in hand, we walk over to the door. Each step I take feels like a marathon's worth of strides. My heart tremors, pumping erratically beneath my bones. Another knock. I reach out my jittery hand, and a wave of nausea hits hard when I hold my breath and open the door. It's him. His eyes meet mine, and I can't speak. I can literally reach out and touch him, but I don't. I'm too scared he might disappear if I make any sudden movements. He looks at me in confusion. His eyes give a little flick, and I wonder if there's maybe a hint of recognition. "Dad." My voice falters and his eyes widen in curiosity, but it's when that very look morphs into astonishment that I know he knows. In one fluid movement, he takes a step towards me and pulls me into his arms. "Oh my God," he breathes in disbelief, and I wrap my free arm around him as the tears start falling. "Elizabeth?" "It's me, Dad," I tell him as my emotions swell to ungodly proportions. His hold on me is the strongest I've felt in my whole life, and all of a sudden my fears, my reservations, my hatred, it vanishes. Declan lets go of my other hand, and I cling it around my dad. His back quakes in my hold, and I hear the click of Declan closing the door as the two of us cry. He cradles my head in his deft hand, the same way he did when I was a little girl, and chokes out, "My baby princess." He draws back, bracing my head in his hands, and scans my face. "My God, you're so beautiful," he says thickly. His words mend wounds, and when my face crumples in sobs, I drop my head and he pulls me back against his chest. My body heaves as I release years and years of agony. I want to speak 1,000 words, but I can't stop crying. I can't stop clinging. I simply can't let go. "Let me look at you again," he says when he pulls back and dips his head down to my level. He's blurry colors and lines, and when I blink, he comes into clarity only to be dissolved all over again. Tears continue to flood and fall as he wipes my cheeks with his thumbs. My hands clutch to his sides, and I painfully weep. "I've missed you so much, Dad." "Oh, sweetheart, I've missed you even more. The pain of losing you. I feel it every second of every day." "Then why didn't you ever come for me?" "Oh, princess," he sighs, hanging his head. "I wanted to. So many times I wanted to." "Then why didn't you?" Something inside me shifts, and all the pain and anger begins to rise through the enormous joy I feel from being in his arms. It collides and battles, and when he looks up at me, I take a step back and snap, "You just left me!" Declan takes my hand as my father stares at me, drowning in visible shame. "Darling." "I needed you," I sling at him. "I've needed you since the day I lost you." "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Why don't we sit down and talk?" I turn to Declan, shaking my head, and he encourages, "Nothing you say will be wrong. I won't let you fall apart, okay?" Leaning my head against his chest, he strokes my hair back and kisses my head before placing his hand on my back. "Let's go sit." We walk over to the living room, and I take a seat next to my dad on the couch as Declan sits on the other side of me, extending his hand out to my dad, saying, "I'm Declan, by the way." My father shakes his hand, responding, "Asher." "That's not your name," I accuse, my voice still shuddering through consuming emotions as I look into his eyes. I try with everything I have to pull myself together, but I can't stop the deluge of new tears that fall. Declan places his hand on my leg, and my dad holds my 2 hands in his. I watch as he takes in a deep breath before saying, "I'm not sure what to say or where to begin. I never thought I'd be sitting next to you, looking into your eyes, holding your hands, hearing your voice." "You could have been. All these years you could have had me, but instead you left me to battle this world on my own.
You have to believe me when I tell you that's the last thing I ever wanted to do.
But you did it anyway. He drops his head again, and I can see his eyes well up. I need you to tell me why, I insist. I need to know why you abandoned me.
I didn't abandon you, sweetheart.
He blinks, and a couple tears skitter down his aged cheeks. You did, I lash out, yanking my hands from his. You're here, alive, and living a fucking lie. I suck in a ragged breath, stand up, and pace across the room before crying out. You have a whole family. I saw them. A son and a fucking daughter. Gripping my head with my hands, I stand and face him. You just replaced me as if I never existed, as if I never even mattered.
No one could ever replace you, he asserts, standing up and walking over to me.
I'm just a forgotten nobody.
I've never forgotten you, he says as he starts to unbutton the top of his dress shirt. You've always been with me.
As his collar and shirt begin to fall open, I see the ink of a tattoo, and when he exposes his chest, I stop breathing. There, across the span of his chest, from shoulder to shoulder, is my name branded on his skin in large script.
Even if I wanted to, I could never forget about you.
I reach out and run my fingers over the letters of my name. When did you...
Shortly after I was sent to prison. I had my cellmate do it.
I press my hand to his chest and feel his heart beat into my palm. I don't understand. They told me you died in there. He buttons his shirt back up, asking,
Will you let me explain?
I nod, and he holds my hand as we walk back over to the couch where Declan is still sitting. My father keeps my hand in his, and Declan wraps his arm around my waist as I face my dad.
They told you why I went to prison, right?
Gun trafficking. He nods.
7 years into my sentence, the feds came to meet with me. It seems that one of the guns was used to assassinate 4 government officials from the United States Gun Trafficking Task Force while they were in Argentina to bust one of their bigger drug cartels, he explains. All the guns that went through me were inspected to ensure the serial numbers had been properly shaved off, but when you're working with the street runners, mistakes are bound to happen. Anyway, the feds offered me a plea deal. I hand over the names in exchange for an immediate release. I knew the risk, but I would have walked through a firing squad to get you back, he says fervently, and I strengthen my hold on his hand.
So what happened?
Turns out it was a ruse, he reveals. Once I handed over the names, that was it. I was given 2 options. Go immediately into witness protection, or go back to my cell. If I went back to my cell, I would have been dead in a matter of days. I was a narc, and some of those guys I was in there with were in some way affiliated with the names I had just given the feds.
He takes my other hand in his and looks at me intently.
They used you to get to me, Princess. I knew from that moment that I'd never see you again, and it felt like I was being murdered anyway, because my life didn't exist without you in it.
And your gravesite?
Since the threat level on my life was so great, the feds thought it best to stage my death. I begged them to let me take you into the program with me, but they refused. My hands were tied. A part of me thought it would be better for you that way, though. I figured it would give you closure instead of me simply disappearing with no trace.
He takes a moment to collect himself before saying,
And here you are, all grown up and so gorgeous.
I continue to shed heartache as memories from the day I was told he died fall from my eyes and down my face. I remember lying in bed with Pike. He held me for hours as I sobbed.
They assured me you were in a good home and that you even had a foster brother.
Declan's hand suddenly constricts on my leg. He thinks I'm going to tell my dad about my suffering. A part of me wants to because it was a lie. I wasn't in a good home, and the resentment of what could have been festers in me. I want to tell him about the torture I endured so I can slap him in the face with it. I'm furious that I was cheated from the good life he assumed I had. But I'm not going to tell him. I can't. I have to lie. Because telling him the truth would serve no purpose. The past is done, and it can't be changed. It would only hurt him to know, and in the end, I just want his love.
They told me you were happy and thriving.
I muster up a smile. Yes, I was happy.
And your foster parents, they were good to you?
Mm-hmm, I respond and nod. I was well taken care of. The lie is a rusted spike through my veins. It's nearly debilitating to see the relief in his eyes.
Are you all still close?
No, they actually died, I tell him. And so did my brother. And the tears that puddle in my eyes from the mere mention of Pike are taken by my dad as sorrow for my whole foster family. They aren't. They're solely for Pike. What he doesn't know and will never know is that all three of them died because of me, by my hands.
I'm so sorry. Do you have other family?
Only Declan, I tell him.
Are you two married?
No, Declan answers.
We live together, though. Close?
Declan's home is in Scotland, but we recently moved to London.
Wow, that sounds amazing,
he says with a sullen expression.
Can I ask how you found me?
I saw your face on the news, I tell him. Someone Declan and I know was able to get a hold of the passenger manifest. It took a while for me to discover that Asher Corey was you, was me.
Rose Archer, he murmurs. Like I said, you've always been with me.
My chin quivers, and I have to ask. Those are your biological kids, aren't they?
Yes.
I look away from my dad. It hurts too much to think they are getting everything I was deprived of.
I met Jillian shortly after I entered the program. I was so low from losing you, and she helped me stand back up.
She knows about me?
I had to lie to her. She knows I had a daughter named Elizabeth, but I had to tell her that you...
His words stall, and I pick them up, positive of what they are, and resume for him. You told her I died, didn't you? He nods.
I would have never done so, but the tattoo, it's what I was instructed by the government to tell people if anyone were to ask.
You love her?
I do.
And you gave your son your name, your real name?
I did.
And your I stammer through mounting anguish. Your daughter, you
She didn't replace you, he insists.
But you love her?
I do. But don't you dare think for a second that it's the same love I have for you. It isn't. I will never love anyone the way I love you.
You call her Princess, I state. I heard you call her Princess.
You heard me.
I was parked across the street from your house last night, I confess. You were late getting home.
Sweetheart,
he starts, and then stops when I drop my head and start crying. He wraps his hand behind my head, and I lean against him while Declan rests his reassuring hands on my shoulders. My father's lips press against the top of my head, the same way Declan often does, and I squeeze my dad's hands. How can I finally be with him and at the same time feel so lost, feel so excluded? I want to scream out how unfair this is the way a child would, but I hold it inside. You won't be able to tell them about me, will you?
No.
I look back up at him, and with a defeated shrug of my shoulders, I ask, So what now? He presses my hands to his chest, affirming,
You are my daughter. Nothing will ever change that. You are the beat of my heart. It's always been you.
Lifting up on my knees, I sling my arms around his neck and latch onto him as he holds me close. I love you so much, Dad.
I love you too, baby girl, he responds. I love you too.
We embrace each other for as long as it takes for me to cry out all the tears my body has to give, and he never loosens his hold on me. He remains constant, never attempting to pull away from me, all the while repeating how much he loves me, how much he's missed me, and how much he's dreamt about me. And when nothing else remains except swollen eyes and stinging cheeks, I let go of his neck.
Can I see you tomorrow? He asks.
I'm scared to let you go, I tell him. What if you don't come back?
I'll come back. I put my life on that promise, okay?
Okay, I respond, but the fear remains. Terrified that this could possibly be the last time I see him, I grab him and kiss his cheek. I know all too well how much life can change in an instant.
I'll be here at 9 a.m.
He stands and pulls me up with him, giving me another strong hug. This time, he kisses my forehead and then my cheek and then my forehead again.
No more tears,
he says as he walks to the door with me tucked under his arm. Promise me you're coming back. He lifts my chin, saying,
I promise,
and then plants a kiss on top of my head again.
Declan,
my dad acknowledges.
Take care of her tonight, will you? Every day of my life, sir.
My father hands me off to Declan, and I trade the warmth of my father for the warmth of my love. I can't stomach the thought of watching him walk out the door, so I bury my head against Declan's chest until I hear the click of the door closing. Chapter 25. When you make a wish on a star and it delivers, serving its purpose, then what happens? Does it die? Does it go on to serve someone else's wish? Maybe it rejoices, exploding into a million shimmering, dusting sparkles that flicker down through the stratosphere. It could be that those very particles are what create hope in this world, and maybe that's why I always carried a little piece of that star with me. As much as I wanted to give up on hope, as much as I thought the notion of it was a crock of shit, a minuscule piece of it always lingered in me. It's a rainy morning as I move about, again full of jittery nerves, and get ready to see my dad, my wish upon a star. Declan has ordered up a tray of food, but I'm too wound up to eat, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't also scared that he wouldn't show up. I'm all too familiar with Murphy's Law. That law has plagued my life continuously, so why wouldn't it do the same now? Nothing in this world is resistant to change. It can happen in a split second, with no warning at all. But my mood shifts as soon as I hear the knock on the door. I look over to Declan, and he wraps up the business call he's on. This time, I don't feel like passing out. Instead, there's an air of effervescence when I open the door and see my dad standing there with a bouquet of pink daisies. I smile with a wisp of a laugh when he steps inside and closes the door.
I hope you still like daisies,
he says when he hands them to me, and I'm in his arms the next second, responding, they're my favorite. Neither of us rushes the embrace. We settle in it and allow ourselves to bask in the comfort we were both robbed of for over 20 years. I inhale, taking in his scent, which reminds me of the past. How is it that I can still remember the way he smelled all those years ago? But I do remember, and it's the same now as it was then. My eyes fall shut as I revel in the moment, a moment that most would fleet through. Yet when someone has been so deprived, they understand the importance a single touch can hold.
I couldn't sleep at all last night,
he tells me, still holding me in his strong arms, allowing me to decide when to let go, but I'm not ready just yet. Me neither. After another minute or so, I finally loosen my arms and pull back. His eyes roam my face for a moment before he finally says,
I just can't get over how much you've grown, and how much time has actually passed.
Are you saying I look old? I quip, making him laugh, and it's such a beautiful sound.
Old? Are you kidding? Have you seen this gray mop on me?
I smile big. You wear silver well.
Distinguished.
Very distinguished.
Good morning, sir,
Declan greets as he approaches us.
Declan,
he responds, shaking Declan's outstretched hand.
Please call me Asher.
I flick my head to my dad, and he catches my shift immediately, apologizing.
I'm sorry. Habit after nearly 15 years.
He then looks to Declan again and corrects to appease me.
Call me Steve. I ordered up some breakfast,
Declan says, and leads my dad to the dining table that seats 8.
This room is impressive,
he notes as we take our seats next to each other. I lay the daisies on the table in front of me, suddenly feeling nervous. My dad senses my unease right away, takes my hand in his, and smiles at me.
I'm nervous too.
You are?
Yes, he says through an awkward laugh. Steve, would you like some coffee? Sounds great, Declan. Thank you.
Declan pours a mug of coffee for my dad, a teacup of hot water for me, and then takes a seat across the table from us. I pluck a buttery croissant from the platter in front of us, and then dunk a bag of tea into my cup. The silence between us is thick, and when I look up, my dad is staring at me over the rim of his mug, which makes me pause. What? With a grin on his face, he shakes his head and answers, The last time I saw you, you were sipping make-believe tea. And now here you are, all grown up, drinking the real thing. I smile through the heartbreaking memories of that day. And I remember you licking imaginary frosting from your imaginary cupcake. You didn't even use a napkin.
You remember that?
I nod as the ache inflames. I remember every detail from that day. My eyes brim with tears, and I fight hard to keep them from falling.
I'm so sorry that had to happen in front of you. It killed me to know that was your last image of me.
You're here now. I need to steer away from what will ultimately break me if I think about it too much. And oddly enough, I add with a smirk, this kind of reminds me of that last tea party. I mean, I don't have a sparkly princess dress on, but I've got my pink daisies, tea, snacks, and you.
True, he says, but back then I was your prince, and it seems that position is no longer available.
I turn to Declan, who comically lifts his coffee cup in accomplished pride and exaggerated dignity, and I laugh.
He seems like a suitable replacement, right?
My dad jokes. He fits the role perfectly.
Since that's the case, an interrogation is in order, don't you think? My dad says. I'm up for the challenge, Steve.
I take a sip of my tea, thoroughly enjoying the fact that the three of us can make light of the situation at hand, and at the same time knowing I can share this huge piece of my past with Declan.
So, I did indeed look you up on the internet. You are quite accomplished for being in your early 30s. I'm a hard worker. What took you from Scotland to Chicago? My father had done a few developments in the States before I graduated with my master's degree. I had always been interested in the business, so I moved here and worked with him for a little while before going out on my own. I found a great location in Chicago and decided to go for it. Lotus, right? That's right, Declan says.
It's an exquisite hotel, I note to my dad.
But now you're in London.
Declan takes a sip of his coffee before answering.
Yes, the build won't begin for another year or so. I just bought the property, and I'm currently working with the architects on the scope and concept for what I'm wanting out of the building. You enjoy what you do? I love it. I'm a hands-on man, and the job lends itself to fulfill that capability. It's also a great feeling to see the process from beginning to end. I can only imagine the pride you must feel to see your ideas come to life, he says before asking, Tell me, how did the two of you meet?
I met him at the grand opening gala, I tell him. Seeming satisfied after grilling Declan, he then turns to me.
What about you? What is it that you do? Did you go to college?
I've already lied to him and allowed him to believe I had a good childhood and lived in a loving foster home, which he naively took for truth, but I need him to believe it. I refuse to punish him with my reality, since he's not to blame for his absence in my life. We were both robbed from each other and lied to, but I keep the lies alive and tell him some half-truths. My foster parents died before I was old enough to attend college. I lived with my brother for most of my life because of the financial situation we both found ourselves in. I did take a few classes here and there, but ultimately never got the chance to seriously pursue anything that would lead to a career.
Well, you must have done something right to be in the midst of people who were attending this gala. Doesn't seem like something anyone off the streets could just attend. The hotel seems quite exclusive and private, my dad says.
I had a few friends in that circle, I lie, sort of.
So, how long ago was that?
A little over 4 months, Declan responds.
That's quick. Maybe for some, Declan tells him. But look at her. I'd be a fool not to snatch her up.
You make it sound almost like a hostage situation, I tease.
It's love, darling,
he says, and then adds, feigning an evil grin.
It takes everyone hostage.
We continue to talk, and my dad and I do our best not to dwell on all that was stolen from us, and enjoy that we have each other now. I suggest getting out and going for a walk, and he informs me that, even after all these years, he is still at risk and has random surveillance as a safeguard, a service provided by witness protection for those whom the government sees fit. Even after all these years? I ask him.
People in the circle I was working in don't take what I did lightly. Lives were lost after I gave the feds what they wanted. I turned my back on them, and now I'm marked in vendetta for life. Those affected will seek out their revenge until one of us is dead.
I don't doubt him, because I'm one of them. I will forever carry the torch of vengeance for those who wronged me and stole from me. Even though I have my father right here in flesh and bone, I'll still seek revenge from those who took him from me in the first place. His phone rings, and when he pulls it from his pocket, he looks up at me with an apologetic expression.
I'm sorry, I have to take this.
At the same time, Declan also receives a call and excuses himself to the bedroom. My father walks to the other room when he accepts the call, but it isn't far enough to keep me from hearing parts of his conversation.
I'm with a client. I won't be. I know. I love you too.
Was that your wife? I question with a tinge of disdain leaking through after he hangs up. When he looks at me from across the room, he's visibly uncomfortable.
Yes.
I stand and don't say anything. The light mood from earlier is now vexatious as real life intrudes on our clandestine gathering.
I'm going to have to leave soon.
Why? My chest sizzles in irritation when jealousy rears its ugly head.
Haley has a recital today.
How fucking lovely. You've missed a million things in my life. You can't miss one of hers? His forehead creases in confliction, but my resentment spares no lenience. It isn't fair, I say thickly.
I agree, but it's what we have to deal with.
So, I begin and then pause when Declan walks back into the room.
Is everything okay?
He asks, sensing the tension, and my father responds,
I have to leave.
It seems his other daughter has a recital that he can't miss, I tell Declan, while keeping my eyes on my dad. Declan places a supporting hand on the small of my back, and I continue what I was saying. So how does this all work then? I mean, if you can't tell them about me...
I don't really know, sweetheart.
I mean, when I leave, I won't be able to call you unless you get yourself a burner phone, but then it's only a matter of time before your wife will accuse you of an affair, and then what happens? You'll resent me? I sputter off, allowing my thoughts to get the better of me.
We don't have to figure this all out today,
Declan says, trying to reassure me, but I'm well aware how sensitive time is, and blurt, Come back with us.
Princess.
When we leave, get on the plane with us. Declan owns the plane. No one would even know you were on it. He moves toward me, saying gently,
I can't leave my family.
His words burn like acid, and I snap. I'm your family.
You are, he says quickly. But so are they, and I can't just disappear.
Like you did with me?
It's not the same.
My body heats with rage and jealousy. I'm giving him a choice, and he's choosing wrong. They've had you, I cry out. They've had more years with you than I ever got.
Hey,
Declan says softly, trying to get my attention, but I ignore him and lash out at my dad. So this is what I'm left with? Scraps? That's all I get of you, whatever time you can manage to sneak away from your precious little family?
Elizabeth,
Declan says in another attempt to get my attention, as my dad stands there speechless. You used to be mine, I tell my father in a quivering voice. It was you and me, and we didn't have to share with anyone.
And now we do.
The sorrow in his eyes is reflected in his voice. But they get you first.
I know it isn't fair. I want as much time as I can get with you, but I have 3 other people who love me and depend on me. and I can't walk away from them and cause even more people the pain I've caused you."
"Why not? It's okay for me to suffer, but not them?"
"It's not okay for you to suffer. It was never okay, but I wasn't given a choice. No matter what I did, it was inevitable that you would suffer. It didn't matter if I went into the program and lived, or if I went back to prison and died."
As I look at him, I can feel the neediness expand in my soul. Its growth makes me feel like I have so much empty space that needs to be